In the freezing blue dawn, a barefoot boy limped out of a drainage tunnel, dragging a wounded biker twice his size toward the highway. His breath shook, his hands were numb, but he whispered, "Don't die yet." Minutes later, the thunder of approaching Harleys changed everything. Before we start this story, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? We love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you enjoy our stories, please consider subscribing to our channel, and don't forget to hit the hype button. Jonah Reddick had been homeless for exactly 43 days. Though he wasn't keeping Count Street calendars, worked differently. Nights stretched long, days blurred together. And food arrived only when he got lucky behind dumpsters, or at the truck stop's trash bins outside Sagabend, Nevada, a desert town that forgot people faster than it made them. At 13, Jonah already carried himself like someone older eyes cautious, shoulders tense, always listening for danger. He slept in an old drainage tunnel near Highway 47, sharing space with a torn blanket and a battered backpack holding everything he owned: a can opener, a thrift store flashlight, a button he kept for no reason except it belonged to the last shirt his father ever wore. That morning, Jonah crawled out of the tunnel, hoping to beat the sun's heat, expecting nothing but hunger and dust. Instead, halfway down the ravine, he spotted a black and red Harley lying on its side, engine ticking as it cooled. A man, big, bleeding, groaning, struggled to crawl toward the road. Jonah froze. The man's vest read Hell's Angels, and he was dying. The biker's breaths came shallow, scraping the cold air. His left leg bent wrong, his leather torn at the shoulder, blood soaking the fabric in a dark patch. Jonah's first instinct was to hide. Big men meant big problems, but the biker's weak voice stopped him. "Kid, help me. Please." Jonah swallowed hard, inching closer on trembling hands. The man was older, maybe late 50s, beard streaked with gray, eyes sharp even through pain. A name patch read Ranger. Jonah had seen bikers roar past town before, but never imagined one helpless on the ground, stranded like roadkill. "What happened?" Jonah whispered. Truck swerved. "Didn't see me?" Ranger coughed, blood foaming at his lip. "Bike went down. Couldn't move my leg. Radio's busted." Jonah glanced at the Harley, smoke curling from a cracked pipe. He knew nobody would drive by this stretch for hours, maybe longer. Ranger winced. "Need?" "My brother's." Jonah lifted his chin toward the distant highway. "I can get you there." Ranger tried sitting up and failed. Jonah stepped closer, surprising even himself. "I'll pull you. Just don't die." Ranger managed a strained smile. "Won't?" "Kid, not yet." Jonah hooked his arms under Ranger's shoulders, bracing his feet against the gravel. He dragged heavy things before: bags of scrap metal, stolen crates, but never a full-grown man built like a grizzly. Ranger groaned as Jonah hauled him inch by inch up the embankment. Dust stung Jonah's eyes. His palms burned. Twice he slipped, knees slamming rock, but he didn't stop. "Easy, kid," Ranger rasped. "Ain't worth breaking yourself." "Shut up," Jonah panted. "You helped me first." Ranger blinked, confused. Jonah didn't explain. The biker's earlier "please" had been the first kind word he'd heard in weeks. When they finally reached the roadside, Jonah collapsed beside him, lungs screaming. Ranger lay back, staring at the sky. "What's your name?" "Jonah. You on the run?" Jonah shrugged. "Just homeless." Ranger let out a rough exhale. "Hell of a thing you're doing for a stranger." Jonah stared at the horizon. "Nobody ever helps me. Maybe. I don't want to be like them." Ranger gave a soft nod, barely visible. "You ain't." Jonah stood, dusting his hands. "Your club'll see you from the highway, right?" Ranger smirked. Oh, they'll come. It started as a faint hum merely. They're just the desert vibrating with distant machinery. Jonah shaded his eyes. Ranger's lips twitched upward. Hear that? Jonah did. The hum grew into a rolling growl, then into 50 individual engines, blending into one monstrous heartbeat. Dust rose far down the stretch of asphalt. Holy crap! Jonah whispered. The convoy approached fast, a river of chrome and leather slicing through the rising heat. Leading them was a broad-shouldered biker with a scar across his jaw and the president's rocker on his vest. Marlin. Ranger lifted a shaky arm. Marl, over here. Marlin's head snapped toward the movement. He barked something the wind didn't catch, and instantly the formation shifted, smooth, practiced, deadly. Bikes swung onto the shoulder, tires crunching gravel. Angels dismounted, boots pounding earth as they surged toward Ranger and the trembling kid beside him. Jonah stepped back instinctively. These men looked like a storm made of muscle. Marlin dropped to one knee, gripping Ranger's vest. Brother, talk to me. Ranger smirked weakly. Truck clipped me, kid. Dragged me out. Marlin turned toward Jonah. The look in his eyes changed everything. Marlin rose slowly, towering over Jonah like a stone wall. Jonah braced for anger, for suspicion, for all the reactions adults usually had when they saw a kid like him. Instead, Marlin crouched, voice low but steady. You pulled him all the way up that ravine? Jonah nodded, throat tight. Didn't know what else to do. Ranger coughed behind them. Kid saved my damn life. The angels exchanged glances, surprise, respect, something heavier. One biker named Deacon unfolded a medical kit while another radioed for an ambulance. But Marlin stayed focused on Jonah. You alone out here? The words cut deeper than intended. Jonah's jaw clenched. Yeah. Marlin studied him carefully, eyes tracing the thin frame, the torn shoes, the way Jonah held himself, like someone expecting to be hit. Then Marlin asked the question that froze Jonah's ribs. Who's looking for you, son? Jonah answered honestly. No one. The silence that followed wasn't pity. It was anger at a world that left kids behind. Marlin placed a steady hand on Jonah's shoulder. You helped one of ours. That means something. And we don't forget our debts. Jonah swallowed. Something inside him shifted dangerously, hopefully. Paramedics arrived within minutes, guided by the angels' hand signals and roaring engines. They lifted Ranger onto a stretcher, checking vitals and splinting his leg, while the bikers formed a half circle around Jonah, an instinctive, protective wall he didn't understand. Marlin stayed beside him, expression unreadable beneath the harsh Nevada sun. When the ambulance pulled away, dust swirling behind it, Marlin finally spoke. You got somewhere safe to go? Jonah hesitated. Safe isn't really a thing I have. A few angels exchanged glances, muttering to each other. Deacon poked at the dirt with his boot, voice low. Kid's been sleeping in a drainage tunnel. Found his blanket down there when we checked for more tracks. Jonah stiffened. He hadn't realized they'd seen that. Marlin exhaled slowly, as if fighting anger that wasn't aimed at Jonah, but at the world that produced situations like this. You hungry? Jonah shrugged, embarrassed to admit it. Yeah. Haven't eaten since yesterday. Marlin jerked his chin toward the bikes. You're riding with us. Jonah blinked. Where? Marlin gave a faint grin. To the one place in this town nobody goes hungry. Jonah climbed onto the back of Marlin's Harley, gripping the president's vest as the engines roared back to life. The convoy rolled through Sagebend like a desert parade, cars pulling over instinctively as if sensing the weight of something important. Jonah's heart pounded, half fear, half awe as the bikes led him into town, weaving between dusty storefronts and faded gas stations. They finally stopped at an old red brick building tucked behind a mechanic shop. Its sign hand-painted, Iron Shelter MC Garage. Jonah braced himself. He expected chaos, cursing, drunkenness, everything movies warned him about. Instead, the garage door rolled open, revealing a clean, organized workspace, benches stacked with tools, a long table covered in plates of breakfast food left from the morning's run. A few men inside looked up mid-bite. The chatter stopped. Marlin placed a steady hand on Jonah's back. "Boys," he said, "this kid dragged Ranger out of a ravine with a broken leg." One biker whistled. Another muttered, "Damn." Jonah swallowed hard. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, no one looked at him like trouble. They looked at him like someone who mattered. Jonah sat at the long metal table with a plate piled so high he thought they were joking. But when he dug in, nobody stopped him. The food was simple eggs, potatoes, biscuits, but it tasted like something sacred. Around him, the angels spoke quietly, respectfully, giving him space, but keeping an eye on him like he was a skittish animal they didn't want to frighten. Deacon slid into the seat across from him, arms inked, voice soft. "Kid, you did something most grown men wouldn't." Ranger's tough as steel, but he wouldn't have lasted another hour down there. Jonah poked at his eggs. Anyone would have helped. Deacon shook his head. "Not true. Plenty of folks drive past what they don't want to see." Jonah didn't reply. He'd lived enough life to know that was true. Marlin joined them, setting 2 waters down. "I talked to Ranger at the hospital," he said. "He kept repeating one thing." Jonah looked up. "What?" "He said you were the only one who stopped." Jonah's chest tightened unexpectedly. He wasn't used to praise. Didn't know where to put it. Marlin leaned back. "Makes you family today." Jonah froze. "Family?" Marlin nodded. "Borrowed kind, but real." Marlin motioned for Jonah to follow him outside, away from the noise and the smell of engine oil. They walked behind the garage, where the desert stretched wide open, endless, brutally honest. Marlin lit a cigarette, exhaled slowly. "Jonah, how long you been on your own?" Jonah hesitated. "A while. Run away?" Jonah's jaw tightened. "Thrown away." Marlin's eyes narrowed, not in judgment, in anger on Jonah's behalf. "What happened?" Jonah scuffed the dirt with his shoe. "Mom died last year. Dad left before that. Nobody wanted a kid who couldn't sit still, couldn't stop getting in trouble. So I left before they could ship me off to a place I didn't choose." Marlin flicked ash to the ground. "Sounds like you survived a lot." Jonah shrugged, trying not to shake. "I don't survive good. I just keep moving." Marlin crouched until they were eye level. "Listen to me. Ranger's alive because you stayed. You didn't run that time." Jonah looked away. "Didn't feel like running." Marlin nodded. "Then hear this. Your life isn't done yet, kid. Not even close." Jonah swallowed hard, not sure why those words hit so deep. They headed back into the garage just as one of the bikers' torch, tall and sharp-eyed, burst through the door holding his phone. "Marlin, it's the hospital." The room went silent. Jonah froze, pulse spiking. Torch handed the phone over. Marlin answered with a gravelly, "Yeah?" Everyone listened, every breath, every shift of weight. Jonah's heart hammered as Marlin's eyebrows lifted. "He's awake." Jonah exhaled. Ranger was alive. Marlin paced slowly, nodding at whatever the nurse said. Yeah, I'll tell him. The kid's right here." Jonah's head shot up. "Me?" Marlin handed him the phone. "He wants you." Jonah pressed it to his ear, palms sweating. Ranger's voice came weak, raspy, but unmistakably warm. "Kid Jonah, you did good." Jonah's throat tightened. "You scared me." Ranger laughed softly, wincing. You saved me. That makes you a part of something now. Jonah didn't speak. He couldn't. Ranger continued, My brothers'll look out for you. Trust em. When the call ended, Jonah lowered the phone slowly. Marlin rested a heavy hand on his shoulder. You heard him. This ain't the end of your story, Jonah. It's the start. The angels didn't let Jonah walk back to the drainage tunnel. When he tried to insist, Marlin gave him a look that ended the discussion instantly. Instead, they led him to a small back room off the garage, usually used for storing extra gear. Today, it held a folded cot, a clean blanket, and a pillow that smelled faintly of laundry soap and motor oil. Jonah stared at it like it was a trick. This is for me? He asked cautiously. Brick, the quietest of the crew, nodded. Yeah, until we figure out something better. Jonah's heart pounded. A bed, indoors, no dripping pipes, no rats, no fear that someone would drag him out by the ankles while he slept. He didn't move toward it, afraid he'd break the illusion. Deacon crossed his arms. You ain't staying in a tunnel tonight. Ranger would chew us out if we let that happen. Jonah blinked rapidly, looking at the floor so no one saw tears gathering. This is too much, he whispered. Marlin shook his head. Kid, this is the bare minimum. The too much part comes later. Jonah didn't know which part scared him more, sleeping alone or sleeping safe. As desert night draped itself over the town, the garage transformed from a workspace into a living room built from metal and loyalty. The angels pulled up chairs, crates, and toolboxes, forming a loose circle where laughter mixed with the heavy rumble of idling bikes. Someone handed Jonah a soda-cold fizzy, the kind he hadn't tasted in months. Brick nudged him. Stay close. Coyotes come sniffing around this time of night. Jonah wasn't sure if he was joking. Deacon recounted old stories, rides gone wrong, rescues gone right, times Ranger had gotten lost but miraculously returned. Jonah listened like these tales were myths from a world he wasn't part of. When they asked about him, he deflected, shrinking into himself. Marlin noticed. No need to spill your whole life tonight, he said gently. Just breathe. You're safe here. Jonah nodded, but safety felt foreign, like a shirt 2 sizes too big. Still, as the men laughed and swapped memories, Jonah felt something strange stir in his chest. It wasn't fear. It wasn't hunger. It was warmth. The kind that came from people choosing to sit close instead of turning away. Jonah pulled the blanket tighter. For once, he didn't feel invisible. It was close to midnight when the stillness snapped. Torch stepped outside to take a call and returned with his jaw clenched tight. Marlin, he said, voice low, you need to hear this. The men shifted immediately. Instincts sharpened. Jonah sat up straighter, sensing tension coil through the air. Marlin took the phone, listening carefully. His face darkened. That truck driver, the one that clipped Ranger? Jonah held his breath. He didn't stop accidentally, Marlin said. Witness just came forward. Says the truck veered at him on purpose. Voices rumbled in outrage. Deacon muttered a curse, so sharp the air nearly cracked. Jonah's stomach twisted. Why would someone do that? Brick answered without looking up. Some folks don't like our patch. They do stupid things. Torch added, cops are tracking him, but he's off-road now. They think he's heading toward the East Barrens. Marlin stood slowly, shoulders broadening like a storm building shape. He's not getting away. Jonah's pulse hammered. He didn't understand everything, but he understood this. Danger wasn't done with him yet, and somehow he was now part of whatever happened next. Marlin instructed the men to gear up. No hot-headed moves, no reckless charges, just watch the roads, support law enforcement, keep the peace. Jonah expected to be told to get inside, lock the door, stay out of the way. Instead, Marlin crouched and looked him dead in the eye. "Jonah, you stay here with Brick. You hear me? Not negotiable." Jonah shook his head instantly. "No, Ranger got hit because he was alone. I'm not letting anyone else go out there without help." The words came out shakier than he intended, but determined. Brick rested a heavy hand on Jonah's shoulder. "Kid, this isn't about bravery. This is about safety." Jonah bristled. "I wasn't safe before today. And I helped." Marlin exhaled, sharply torn between respecting the kid's courage and needing him protected. "You've done enough for one lifetime," he said. But Jonah stepped closer. "Ranger said I'm part of something now. Family doesn't hide when trouble comes." Silence fell. Jonah's chest heaved. Marlin finally nodded once, slowly. "All right," he said. "You stay close to me. Not 10 feet away. Understand?" Jonah nodded fiercely. He didn't want to be a passenger. He wanted to stand with them. They rolled out like shadows, wearing chrome, engines thundering through the sleeping town. Jonah rode behind Marlin once more, clutching the president's vest, heart pounding with something more complex than fear, something like devotion. The desert stretched wide and cold as they approached the East Barrens, headlights slicing through sagebrush and dust devils. Torch rode ahead, scanning tire tracks illuminated by floodlights strapped to his bike. "Fresh," he called out. "Big rig. Turned off the main road maybe 20 minutes ago." Marlin revved, signaling the formation to widen. Jonah felt the vibration run up his spine. Deacon rode alongside them, face carved with focus. "He's desperate now," Deacon called. "Cornered men make stupid choices." Jonah swallowed hard. "He won't hurt anyone else, right?" Marlin answered without hesitation. "Not tonight." They pressed deeper into the barren land until a faint glint appeared in the distant metal-reflecting moonlight. A truck, stalled, doors wide. The Angels slowed, forming a protective arc. Jonah tightened his grip. This wasn't just about a crash anymore. It was something bigger. Something that would test the trust he'd placed in them, and the trust they'd placed in him. The Angels approached the stalled semi-slowly, cautiously, like men who knew desperation could turn teeth into weapons. Jonah clung to Marlin's vest, eyes fixed on the dark silhouette leaning against the truck's grill. The driver, mid-40s, thick beard, wild eyes, stumbled forward, hands shaking. "I didn't mean to," he shouted before anyone spoke. He swerved. "It wasn't my fault." Marlin shut off his engine, the silence slamming harder than any accusation. "You're lying," he said calmly. The driver backed up. He flipped me off once on the highway. I thought I'd scare him." The Angels stiffened. Not from surprise, from fury, contained only by discipline. Jonah slid off the bike, his feet touching the dirt softly. He shouldn't speak. He knew it. But anger simmered in his chest, like something long buried, waking up. "You nearly killed him," Jonah whispered. "You left him to die." The driver finally noticed him, confusion flickering. "Kid, you don't get it." Jonah stepped forward, fists trembling. "I dragged him out. Not you." The man opened his mouth. No excuse came, because none existed. Before the driver could bolt, Torch and Deacon flanked him, not touching, just blocking every escape like walls of muscle and intention. Marlin stood a few feet away, arms crossed, voice low and controlled. "You're not being beaten. You're not being threatened. But you are being held," the man sputtered. "Held? You can't." "Legally detained," Marlin clarified, "until law enforcement arrives. You left the scene of an accident. That's attempted vehicular assault." As if summoned, Distant sirens rose beyond the ridge, small town units rushing fast because the angels had called them personally. Jonah saw the panic drain from the driver's face as deputies arrived and took him into custody without a single biker raising a hand. One officer nodded to Marlin with familiarity. "Appreciate the assist. We've been hunting him." Jonah watched the man get cuffed, watched the truth settle over the desert like dust. Sometimes justice didn't roar, sometimes it simply arrived. Marlin placed a steady palm on Jonah's back. "You did good staying steady," he said. Jonah's breath shivered. "I wasn't steady." Marlin cracked a faint smile. "Kid, nobody steady shakes this guy that bad." By the next morning, Jonah sat half asleep on the garage cot when a familiar rumble approached, slower, careful. Ranger, leg wrapped and arm braced, was being driven in Marlin's truck. Jonah scrambled upright as the injured biker stepped out with help. Ranger grinned crookily. "Told the nurse I needed to see the kid who drag raced death for me." Jonah flushed. "I didn't drag race anything." "Kid," Ranger said, reaching out, "you hauled my busted carcass up a ravine." "That counts." Jonah hesitated before shaking his hand. Ranger squeezed gently. "You saved my life. You hear me?" "Not maybe, not sorta you did." Jonah's chest tightened painfully. No adult had ever said those words to him. Ranger looked around at the gathered angels. "So what's this about him sleeping on a cot in the back?" Marlin answered. "Temporary until we figure out next steps." Ranger scoffed. "Next steps?" "He stays with us." The garage fell quiet. Jonah froze. Ranger lowered his voice. "A boy who risks himself for a stranger doesn't belong in tunnels. He belongs where he's seen." Jonah swallowed hard. Being seen felt scarier than the desert. That afternoon, Marlin walked Jonah behind the garage again, to the same stretch of desert that had witnessed their first real conversation. Jonah stared at his shoes, waiting for the inevitable goodbye. "Thanks, move on." Instead, Marlin crossed his arms. "Ranger wants you close. The club wants you close. But it's your choice." Jonah blinked. "Choice? If you want," Marlin said, "you stay here temporary at first. Safe bed, meals, school registration. We'll work with social services. You're owed stability." Jonah felt the air leave his lungs. "You mean, like foster care?" "More like family who isn't running anywhere." Jonah's throat tightened. "What if I mess up?" Marlin shrugged. "Then you mess up. We deal with it, not toss you aside." Jonah's eyes burned. "Nobody's ever said that to me." Marlin placed a hand on his shoulder. "Get used to it." Jonah stood silent for a long moment, then nodded, small, trembling, but real. "I want to stay." Marlin smiled, the rare kind that softened his whole face. "Then welcome home, kid." For the first time in his life, Jonah believed the word meant something. That evening, the angels gathered around Jonah as he sat on the tailgate of Marlin's truck. Wrapped in a clean hoodie Deacon had dug from a dusty storage bin, Ranger leaned on a crutch nearby, pride shining in his tired eyes. Brick set a plate of food in front of Jonah. Torch placed a patched bandana in his hand club colors, but not official, just symbolic. Marlin addressed the circle. "This kid didn't run from danger. He ran toward someone who needed him. That makes him our responsibility. Our family." Jonah blinked rapidly, overwhelmed. Ranger lifted his chin. "You got grit, kid. And heart. Two things the world can't take from you." Jonah swallowed the lump in his throat. "I just didn't want him to die alone." Ranger nodded. "That's why you belong here." As dusk faded into a star-scattered sky, the men revved their engines softly, a sound like a vow. Jonah listened, feeling the vibration in his ribs. For the first time, He wasn't drifting. He wasn't forgotten. He was chosen. And when Marlin said, "Ride with us tomorrow," Jonah answered the only way he could. "Yeah," he whispered. "I'd like that." Sometimes the smallest act of courage becomes the spark that changes everything. If Jonah's journey moved you, stay with us. Hit subscribe, tap like, and ring the bell. More stories are coming about the roads where broken souls find unexpected family. You're part of this ride now.